The hand connected with the wall beside her head, not with her skin. A small mercy, but not a kindness. The plaster gave a soft, defeated crunch. Dust, fine as powdered sugar, rained down onto the shoulder of her emerald gown. She did not flinch. She had learned long ago that flinching was a reward. It was confirmation. It was the spark of fear he so desperately craved to see in her eyes. Ilara Vance kept her eyes on the weave of his tuxedo jacket, a point just below his chin. She catalogued the details, silk lapels fraying ever so slightly at the edge where he worried them with his thumb. A single arrogant onyx stud, the faint, cloying scent of expensive whiskey and cheaper entitlement. "Are you listening to me?" Marcus hissed, his voice a venomous whisper that was somehow louder in the recessed alcove than the symphony of chatter and clinking glasses from the gala beyond. She was. She always was. She was listening to the way his words slurred, a sign he'd had 3 whiskeys, not the 2 he could handle. She was listening to the tremor of rage in his tone, the fury of a man whose prized possession was malfunctioning. "You will go out there," he continued, leaning in closer, his breath hot and sour against her cheek. "You will smile. You will laugh at my jokes. You will tell anyone who asks that I am a genius, that the Meridian Pavilion was my vision from start to finish. Do you understand?" She did not answer. The Meridian Pavilion had been her vision. It had been born on her drafting table during 100 sleepless nights, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a desperate need to create something beautiful, something that could not be touched by the ugliness of her life with him. It was a structure of soaring glass and steel, designed to look like a bird in mid-flight, her soul rendered in concrete. He had stolen it, presenting her final renderings as his own preliminary sketches. He had not updated the file. He was working from a version of her that had never been accurate, a version that he believed he owned. "Answer me," he snarled, his grip tightening on her upper arm. His fingers dug into the delicate silk, bruising the skin beneath. This was his pattern, the illusion of control in public, the assertion of ownership in private. She finally lifted her gaze from his lapel to his eyes. They were bloodshot, narrowed with a possessive fire. She saw nothing in them she recognized as human, only a hollow, performed power. "Let go of my arm, Marcus." Her voice was quiet, not a plea, a statement of fact. The kind of statement one makes about the weather. It will rain, the sun will set. Let go of my arm. His face contorted, a mask of disbelief cracking to reveal the raw panic beneath. He was losing control. In public. At the gala meant to be the pinnacle of his fraudulent triumph. "You have an obligation!" he spat, his knuckles white where his hand was still braced against the wall. "An obligation to me, to us." She thought about the word us. It felt like a stone in her mouth. She thought about the last 5 years, the quiet terror, the meticulously managed public appearances, the slow, systematic erosion of her confidence, her friendships, her very self. She thought about the blueprints he had claimed, the credit he had stolen, and the small, shrinking space she was allowed to occupy in her own life. She had been enduring. She had been waiting for the right moment, the perfect confluence of resources and courage to finally leave. But standing there, with the ghost of plaster dust on her shoulder and the bite of his fingers in her arm, she realized there was no perfect moment. There was only this one, the breaking point. "There is no us," she said, and the words were not loud, but they were solid. They had weight. They landed in the space between them and stayed there, the kind of silence that doesn't echo, the kind that settles. For a second, he just stared, his mind trying to process the error message. He had not anticipated this response. This was not in his script. Then, the panic curdled into pure rage. His hand tightened, pulling her forward, off balance. His other hand, the one against the wall, came down. He was going to hit her, here, now. She did not scream. She did not have to. A voice, low and calm as a deep river, cut through the tense air of the alcove. It was not loud, but it possessed a strange gravity, pulling all sound and attention towards it. "Let go of her!" The words were simple, a command, not a request. They were spoken in English, but carried the cadence of Korean, a subtle, precise intonation. Alara's head turned, a slow, mechanical motion. Marcus froze, his hand still gripping her arm, his face a caricature of fury and confusion. Standing at the edge of the alcove, partially cloaked in the shadows cast by a large marble pillar, was a man. He was impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that seemed to absorb the light around it. His stillness was the most arresting thing about him. In the swirling chaos of the gala, he was a point of absolute calm. He did not rush. He was not performing. He simply was. He held a glass of what looked like water, the ice within it perfectly clear. He took a slow, deliberate sip, his eyes never leaving Marcus. They were dark, intelligent, and held a chilling lack of emotion. They were the eyes of a man who did not need to get angry. Anger was an inefficient expenditure of energy. Marcus, ever the performer, puffed out his chest. "I'm sorry. Do we know you? This is a private conversation." The man took another sip of water. He ignored Marcus completely, his gaze shifting to Alara. For the first time, she felt seen. Not looked at, not appraised, but seen. He saw the dust on her gown, the tension in her jaw, the carefully constructed wall of composure she had built around herself. His eyes registered the faint, blooming marks of Marcus's fingers on her arm through the green silk. A flicker of something cold and ancient passed through his expression before being suppressed. "I asked you a question," Marcus blustered, his voice rising. He was playing to an audience that wasn't there, trying to reassert the dominance that had so suddenly evaporated. The man finally looked at Marcus. It was the kind of look one might give an insect crawling across a priceless document, an annoyance to be dealt with swiftly and without ceremony. "Security," the man said. His voice remained at that same low, even pitch. It was not a shout for help, it was a summons. From the periphery, two men materialized. They moved with a liquid efficiency that spoke of extensive training. They were dressed in identical dark suits, their faces impassive. They had not been part of the gala's hired security. They belonged to him. One of the men placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. It was a light touch, almost polite, but carried the implicit promise of overwhelming force. "Sir, you need to come with us." Marcus finally seemed to understand he was no longer the most important person in the room. His face went from red to a blotchy, pale white. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he stammered, his gaze darting between the man in the charcoal suit and the security personnel flanking him. The man gave a small, almost imperceptible nod to his security. The pressure on Marcus's shoulder increased. The hand gripping Alara's arm was finally forcibly removed. Another of the men gently, firmly, took Marcus by his other arm. "I am Jinwoo Kwon," the man said, his voice steady as iron wrapped in silk. He said the name as if it were a simple fact like stating the time. But a ripple went through the nearby clusters of guests who had begun to notice the silent drama. Conversations faltered. The name Kwon, paired with that face, that bearing, meant something. It meant power. The deep, quiet, structural power that made men like Marcus look like children playing dress-up. Marcus's eyes widened in dawning horror. He knew the name. Everyone in this room knew the name. Kwon Industries was the silent backer behind half the projects on display tonight, the invisible empire whose decisions could make or break entire firms. "Wait!" Marcus pleaded, his arrogance collapsing into a desperate, whining panic. "Wait! There's been a misunderstanding. She's with me. Alara, tell him." He looked at her, his eyes begging, not because he was sorry, because he was caught. Alara looked from Marcus's pathetic, crumbling face to the calm, unreadable expression of Jinwoo Kwon. She said nothing. Her silence was her answer. It was the loudest thing she had ever said in her life. The security team began to escort Marcus away. He struggled, his expensive shoes scuffing on the polished marble floor. "You can't do this. I'm the lead architect on the Meridian Pavilion. She's my assistant. She's nobody." Jin Woo Kwon watched him be removed, his expression unchanged. He made a small, discreet gesture with his hand. One of his men, who had been standing by, spoke quietly into a device on his wrist. The process was smooth, clinical. Marcus was being erased from the evening. When the alcove was quiet again, the only sounds the distant hum of the party and the soft crunch of a single remaining piece of plaster under Alara's shoe, Jin Woo Kwon finally turned his full attention to her. "Are you all right, Miss Vance?" he asked. The question and the use of her name stunned her. He knew who she was, not just as Marcus's girlfriend, as Alara Vance. She could only manage a nod, her throat tight. He looked at the wall where Marcus's fist had landed, a small crater in the pristine white. Then his eyes went to her arm, where the ghost of Marcus's grip was already turning a darker shade of purple against her pale skin. He did not comment on it, but she saw his jaw tighten for a fraction of a second. "You will not be returning to your apartment tonight," he said. It was another statement of fact. "My driver is waiting outside. He will take you to a secure residence." Alara found her voice, though it was thin and reedy. I don't understand." "Marcus Thorne will not have access to you," Jin Woo Kwon explained, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "He will not have access to your work. He will not have access to anything that belongs to you, ever again. It's handled." He turned and began to walk back toward the main hall, assuming she would follow. She stood frozen for a moment, caught between the life that had just been violently dismantled and the terrifying unknown alternative being presented to her. He paused after a few steps, looking back at her over his shoulder. He did not seem impatient. He simply seemed to be waiting for reality to catch up with her. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice a little softer this time, "you are safe now." The words landed in the center of her chest, a strange, disorienting warmth. Safety. It was a concept so foreign it felt like a language she had forgotten how to speak. She looked down at her own hands, which were trembling slightly. She looked at the crater in the wall. She thought of the apartment that wasn't hers, the life that wasn't hers, the credit for the work that was hers alone. Slowly, deliberately, she took a step. And another. She followed him out of the shadows and into the light. The drive was silent. The car was a dark, impossibly luxurious sedan that moved through the city like a phantom. It smelled of clean leather and something else, something faintly metallic and sterile, like the air in a server room. It was the smell of quiet, efficient power. Alara sat in the back, as far from Jin Woo Kwon as the space would allow, her borrowed wrap clutched around her shoulders. He had procured it from somewhere, a simple cashmere thing the color of charcoal, and had draped it over her without a word before they left the gala. She watched the city lights smear past the tinted window, a kaleidoscope of fractured colors. Her mind was a maelstrom of shock and a strange, terrifying calm. One reality had ended. Another had begun without her consent. She felt like a passenger in her own life, a feeling she was used to, but the driver had changed. Jin Woo Kwon did not speak. He sat opposite her, his profile illuminated by the passing streetlights. He was looking at a tablet, his thumb moving in slow, precise scrolls. He was not ignoring her. It felt more like he was giving her space, a pocket of silence to process the implosion of her world, the kind of silence that doesn't demand to be filled. The car finally glided to a stop, not in front of a hotel, but before the imposing gates of a private high-rise in the city's most exclusive district. A guard emerged from a discreet booth, saw the car, and opened the gates without a word. The vehicle descended into a private, brightly lit garage. "We're here," Jin Woo said, his voice pulling her from her reverie. He put the tablet away, and the car door was opened by another man in a suit. They rode a private elevator that opened directly into a penthouse apartment. The doors slid open to reveal a space that was less a home and more a statement. It was vast, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a staggering 180-degree view of the city skyline. The furniture was sparse, architectural, chosen for its form as much as its function. It was beautiful, but cold. The air of an art gallery, not a living room. "This is one of my properties," he explained, walking towards the window. "It is secure. No one has access without my authorization. You will be safe here." Ilara stood just inside the doorway, feeling small and out of place in her ruined gown. The cashmere wrap felt like a costume. "Mr. Kwan," she began, her voice stronger now, "I appreciate your assistance, but I can't stay here. I have my own apartment, my own things." He turned from the window to face her. His expression was patient. "The lease on your apartment was in Marcus Thorne's name. I took the liberty of having my legal team review it this evening. There is a co-tenancy clause that he has repeatedly violated. The lease will be terminated in the morning. Your belongings will be retrieved, inventoried, and brought to you here." She stared at him, bewildered by the speed and finality of it. He had dismantled a piece of her life with a quiet phone call while she was still processing the initial shock. Why are you doing this?" she asked, the question raw with confusion. He walked over to a sleek black kitchen island and retrieved a bottle of water from a hidden refrigerator. He opened it and handed it to her. His fingers did not touch hers. "A few months ago," he began, his voice taking on a narrative quality, "my company, Kwan Industries, became the primary investor in the Meridian Pavilion project. As part of our due diligence, I reviewed the entire project file, the architectural submissions, the change orders, the progress reports. Everything." He paused, letting the information settle. "I saw the initial drafts, the ones submitted under the name E. Vance. They were brilliant, raw, but brilliant. Then I saw the final renderings, submitted under the name M. Thorne. They were identical to your drafts, merely polished. He had not changed a single fundamental concept." Ilara felt the air leave her lungs. He knew. He had known all along. All those months she had felt invisible, screaming into a void. Someone had been quietly reading her work. Someone had seen her. "I am an admirer of competence, Miss Vance," Jinwoo continued, his gaze direct. "I have a profound intolerance for fraud. Marcus Thorne is a fraud. You are a talent. My interest is in protecting a valuable asset." The word asset stung. It was what Marcus had called her, but from Jinwoo Kwan's lips it sounded different. Not a possession, an investment, a thing of inherent value that required protection to flourish. It was a cold corporate assessment, and yet it was the most profound validation she had ever received. "So this is a business decision?" she asked, trying to grasp the framework of this new reality. "It is a decision," he said, neither confirming nor denying the qualifier. "My assistant, Lena, will be here in the morning. She will have clothing, toiletries, anything you need. There is a bedroom through that door. Rest. We will speak more tomorrow." He turned to leave, his part in the evening's events seemingly concluded. "Wait," she said, and he stopped, his hand on the panel that would call the elevator. "My friend, Sarah. She was at the gala. She'll be worried. She knows about Marcus. She'll think I went home with him." Jinwoo took out his phone. He did not ask for the number. "What is her full name?" "Sarah Jenkins." He typed for a moment. "She is a junior architect at Sterling Cooper. She left the gala 20 minutes ago. She took a cab to her apartment in Brooklyn. She is home now. My assistant has already sent her a text from a secure number, informing her that you are safe and will contact her in the morning. The message was worded to appear as if it came from you." Ilara was speechless. The sheer, breathtaking efficiency was terrifying and comforting in equal measure. He had not just anticipated her needs, he had addressed them before she had even voiced them. He was a man who operated 3 steps ahead of the present moment. He gave a slight, formal bow of his head. "Good night, Miss Vance." The elevator doors slid shut, leaving her alone in the vast, silent penthouse, the city glittering like a fallen constellation at her feet. She walked to the window and placed a hand on the cool glass. For the first time in 5 years, she was completely, utterly alone. And for the first time in 5 years, she felt the first, fragile tendril of peace. It was a disorienting relief, like the first breath after being held under water for too long. The exhaustion of long-term suffering was a heavy cloak, and for a moment, it felt as if someone had lifted it from her shoulders. The next morning, Ilara woke to the smell of coffee. The sun was streaming through the windows of the guest bedroom, a room larger than her entire apartment. She had slept in a bed that felt like a cloud, a deep, dreamless sleep she hadn't experienced in years. For a moment, she felt a sliver of panic, the disorientation of waking in an unfamiliar place. Then, the events of the previous night came rushing back. The gala, Marcus, the quiet, authoritative voice of Jin-Woo Kwon. She found a set of clothes laid out on a chair. Simple black trousers, a cream-colored silk blouse, and soft leather flats. They were her size. Of course they were. She showered in a bathroom carved from white marble using soaps that smelled of green tea and ginger. It was all impersonal, yet deeply personal. A curated, frictionless existence. In the main living area, a woman with a chic black bob and an iPad stood by the kitchen island where a tray with coffee, pastries, and fruit was waiting. "Miss Vance," the woman said with a warm but professional smile. "I'm Lena, Mr. Kwan's executive assistant. I hope you slept well." "I did, thank you," Ilara said, feeling shy and overwhelmed. "Mr. Kwan asked me to ensure you have everything you need. I've taken the liberty of purchasing some essentials. If the styles are not to your liking, we can arrange a private shopping appointment this afternoon." Lena's voice was brisk but kind. She was the human interface for Jin-Woo's formidable efficiency. "This is fine, thank you," Ilara said, gesturing to the clothes she was wearing. "It's more than fine." "Good," Lena smiled. "Now, there are a few matters. First, your personal effects from your old apartment have been packed and are in storage. We can have them delivered here whenever you are ready. Second, Mr. Kwan has arranged for a new phone for you." She slid a slim black box across the island. "Your number has been ported over. It is completely secure. Mr. Thorne will not be able to contact you." Ilara looked at the box. It was another piece of her old life being replaced, upgraded, sanitized. She felt a pang of something like grief for the life she was losing, as miserable as it had been. It was, at least, hers. This new life, this protected, curated existence, felt borrowed. "Mr. Kwan also wanted me to pass along this," Lena said, handing her a folder. Inside was a single document. It was a contract, a consulting agreement with Kwan Industries' new architectural and design division. The salary offered was more than triple what she had been making. At the top, under Project Lead, was her name. "Mr. Kwan believes your talent has been underleveraged," Lena explained gently. "He would like you to head the design for the new waterfront development project." Ilara sank onto one of the bar stools, the heavy paper cool against her fingers. This was what he meant by protecting an asset. He wasn't just giving her a safe house. He was giving her a career. He was giving her back the future Marcus had tried to steal. I need to think about this," she said, her mind reeling. "Of course," Lena said, her tone understanding. "There is no pressure. Mr. Kwan was very clear about that. Your safety and well-being are the primary concern. This is an offer, not an obligation." The distinction was critical. Marcus had spoken of obligation. Jin-Woo Kwon spoke of offers. One was a cage, the other a door. Later that day, after Lena had departed, leaving Ilara with a refrigerator full of food and a closet full of clothes, she found herself pacing the vast apartment. The silence was immense. She was used to noise. Marcus's angry tirades, his loud music, the constant hum of her own anxiety. This silence was different. It was the kind of silence that allows you to hear your own thoughts. She thought about the contract. It was an opportunity she had only dreamed of. But accepting it felt like trading one form of dependency for another, from Marcus's tyranny to Jinwoo's benevolent patronage. Was she strong enough to stand on her own? Her new phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Ilara!" Oh my God, are you okay? I got your weird text last night. Call me right now. Ilara smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. She called her friend. He did what? Sarah shrieked through the phone after Ilara had given her the condensed version of the previous night. And this guy, this Quan, he just showed up and had Marcus dragged out? Essentially, yes. Holy crap. That's like something out of a drama. Is he handsome? He sounds handsome. And rich. And powerful. And Korean. That's like the holy quadrifecta. Ilara laughed, a genuine rusty sound. I guess. It was all a bit of a blur. A blur? Ilara, this is huge. You're free. Marcus is gone. And you have a mysterious, powerful benefactor. What are you going to do? He offered me a job, Ilara said quietly. There was a pause on the other end of the line. And? Sarah asked, her tone more serious now. I'm not sure. It feels complicated. Ilara, Sarah said, her voice firm. Listen to me. For 5 years, that monster has been taking credit for your genius. He has been holding you down, making you small. Now, someone with the power to actually do something about it has not only seen your worth, but is offering you the chance to prove it on the biggest stage imaginable. This isn't complicated. This is justice. Take the job. Take the money. Take everything he's offering. You've earned it. Sarah's words cut through the fog of Ilara's uncertainty. She was right. This wasn't about dependency. It was about opportunity. An opportunity she had earned 100 times over. That evening, Jinwoo Kwon returned. He was dressed in a dark blue suit this time, his tie loosened slightly. He looked tired. He found her in the living area, standing before a blank wall, her head tilted in thought. Miss Vance, he said, his voice a low rumble. Mr. Kwon, she replied, turning to face him. Please, call me Ilara. A small nod. Jinwoo. I've reviewed your offer, she said, holding up the folder. I have some conditions. A flicker of surprise and perhaps approval crossed his face. He had expected gratitude, perhaps fear. He had not expected negotiation. He was working from a version of her that was still incomplete, but he was willing to update the file. I'm listening, he said, taking a seat on one of the minimalist sofas. First, she said, her voice gaining strength with every word. I want full creative control over the waterfront project. No committees, no oversight from executives who don't understand structural engineering. I report to you, and only you. Agreed, he said without hesitation. Second, I want to build my own team. I have a list of people, like my friend Sarah Jenkins, who are talented but have been overlooked. I want to bring them with me. Provide Lena with the list. If they are competent, they will be hired. Third, she said, taking a deep breath. This apartment. I can't stay here. He raised an eyebrow. It is not to your liking? It's beautiful, she admitted. But it isn't mine. I don't want to live in a gilded cage, no matter how comfortable. I appreciate the safety, but I need my own space. A place that I choose, that I pay for with my own salary. He was silent for a long moment, studying her. She met his gaze without wavering. She was not the frightened woman in the ruined gown from the night before. She was an architect, drawing the blueprints for her new life. She was asserting a boundary. Finally, he gave a slow nod. Your point is valid. An advance on your salary will be provided. Lena will assist you in finding a suitable and secure residence. He stood up. Is that all? Yes, she said, feeling a surge of exhilaration. She had not been dismissed. She had been heard. Good, he said. Welcome to Kwon Industries, Ilara. As he turned to leave, she spoke again. Jinwoo. What about Marcus? He paused at the door. Marcus Thorne is a problem that is resolving itself. Do not concern yourself with him. But Marcus was not resolving himself. In the days that followed, while Ilara threw herself into her new role with a fervor born of years of suppressed creativity, Marcus was discovering the true nature of the power he had provoked. From his perspective, it was a series of baffling and catastrophic events. The gala organizers sent him a bill for the damaged wall, along with a lifetime ban from all their events. His corporate credit cards were declined. When he went to his office, his key card didn't work. He was informed by a stony-faced security guard that his employment had been terminated. He tried to call his lawyer, only to be told the firm could no longer represent him due to a conflict of interest. They had been on retainer with a subsidiary of Korean Industries for a decade. He was blind with arrogance and rage. He could not comprehend the scale of his own destruction. He was convinced this was all a temporary theatrical display by Ilara's new, wealthy boyfriend. He believed that if he could just get to her, talk to her, he could undo the damage. "Give her 3 days," he told his one remaining friend over a cheap beer. "She'll be begging to come back. She can't survive without me." He hired a private investigator to find her. The investigator took his money and, within an hour, reported his activities directly to Jinwoo's head of security. Jinwoo was kept apprised of Marcus's every move via short, concise updates from Lena. He read them without comment. He was not a man who enjoyed the suffering of others. He was simply a man who believed in consequences. Marcus had created a debt. Jinwoo was merely ensuring the bill was paid in full. Ilara, meanwhile, was flourishing. She and Sarah, now her second-in-command, worked out of a state-of-the-art studio provided by Korean Industries. She was decisive, innovative, and her vision for the waterfront project was breathtaking. Jinwoo would sometimes visit the studio late at night after his own work was done. He would stand in the doorway and watch her, surrounded by blueprints and models, her face alive with passion. She was in her element, a master craftswoman finally given the right tools in the right space. Their interactions were quiet, respectful. He would bring her coffee. She would explain a complex structural problem. There was a slow, steady current of awareness building between them. It was not the fiery passion of a whirlwind romance. It was something deeper, more solid. A recognition of equals. He saw her competence, her resilience. She saw his quiet strength, the immense, controlled power he wielded with such precision. She began to understand that his control was not about domination, but about creating order from chaos. It was about protection. One rainy Saturday, he drove her out of the city. They traveled for over an hour into the green, rolling hills of the countryside. They arrived at a traditional Korean estate, a series of elegant dark wood buildings with tiled roofs set around a serene courtyard with a koi pond. "My family's home," he explained as an old woman with a kind, wrinkled face opened the gate. The woman, his mother, greeted him with a warm embrace before turning to Ilara. She looked her up and down, her eyes sharp and intelligent. She spoke in Korean, a rapid, gentle stream of words. Jinwoo translated. "My mother says you have sad eyes, but they are honest. She says you are like a willow tree. You bend, but you do not break." Ilara felt a blush creep up her neck. His mother, Mrs. Kwan, took Ilara's hand. Her hand was small and surprisingly strong. She led her inside, chattering away in Korean, pointing out pieces of art, ancient ceramics, and family photographs. She did not need a common language to communicate her approval, her welcome. For the second time since meeting Jinwoo, Ilara felt truly seen. First by the son, for her mind, now by the mother, for her spirit. She was offered a seat, a cup of tea, a place in their quiet, ordered world. It was a form of sanctuary she had never imagined. While Ilara was finding her footing, Marcus was hitting rock bottom. His money was gone. His reputation was in tatters. He was living in a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city. He had become consumed by a single obsessive thought: revenge. He learned through a gossip column about the upcoming Obsidian Gala, the most exclusive event of the year, hosted by Jinwoo Kwan himself. It was to be the official unveiling of the waterfront project's initial phase. He saw it as his last, best chance to confront them, to expose them, to reclaim what he believed was his. It was a fatal miscalculation. The night of the Obsidian Gala arrived. The venue was a newly constructed museum, another of Korean Industries' projects. The main hall was a cavern of black marble and glass, glittering with the city's elite. Ilara stood beside Jinwoo, radiant in a gown of deep midnight blue that she had designed herself. It was architecturally precise, a column of silk and shadow. She was no longer hiding. She was a partner, a presence. She felt a prickle of unease as the evening wore on. "He's going to do something," she murmured to Jinwoo, her hand finding his arm. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact. His hand covered hers, his touch warm and steady. "I know," he said, his voice a low reassurance. "It is accounted for." And then he was there, Marcus Thorne. He had somehow slipped past the outer layers of security. He was a disaster. His suit was rumpled, his face was unshaven, and his eyes were wild with desperation. He strode into the center of the room, a man on fire with his own self-destruction. The crowd fell silent as he pointed a trembling finger at Alara. "Her!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "She's a fraud! A thief!" A wave of murmurs went through the crowd. Alara felt a cold dread, a phantom limb of her past life aching. But Jinwoo's hand on hers was a solid anchor. Marcus lurched forward. "Everything she has, she stole from me. The waterfront project, that was my concept. She was my assistant, my girlfriend. She owes me." He was raving, a man stripped of everything but his own delusion. He turned his wild gaze on the powerful figures in the room. "She doesn't belong here. She doesn't belong at this table." He lunged toward the platform where Alara and Jinwoo stood beside a scale model of the waterfront development. Jinwoo's security materialized, forming a silent, immovable wall before he could get within 10 feet. Jinwoo did not raise his voice. He waited for Marcus's frantic shouting to subside into ragged, desperate breaths. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, Jinwoo Quan spoke, his voice amplified by the room's acoustics, calm and lethally precise. "Mr. Thorne," he began as if addressing a junior employee in a boardroom, "you seem to be operating under a number of misconceptions. Allow me to clarify." He took out his phone and tapped the screen. The large display behind the platform, which had been showing images of the project, flickered to life. It showed a document, a deed of sale. "Your firm, Thorne and Associates," Jinwoo said, his voice a cool narrative, "was insolvent. It was purchased 3 weeks ago by a subsidiary of my holding company. Your intellectual property, including all designs and concepts, was part of that acquisition." The screen changed. It showed a legal notice of termination. "Your employment was terminated for cause, specifically for professional misconduct and fraud. The designs for the Meridian Pavilion, which you claimed as your own, have been correctly and publicly attributed to their true architect." The screen changed again. It showed the website for the Meridian Pavilion. Ilara's name and photograph were now prominently displayed under the title Lead Architect. Marcus stared at the screen, his mouth hanging open. He was shaking his head, unable to process the systematic annihilation of his reality. "The apartment you lived in," Jinwoo continued, his tone relentless, "was leased by another of my companies. The lease was terminated due to your violation of its terms. Your possessions are in a storage facility in Queens. You have 30 days to claim them before they are auctioned." The screen displayed a map. A red pin dropped on a nondescript building. The credit lines you used, the bank that held your mortgage, they are all part of the Quan Financial Group. Your assets have been frozen to cover the significant debts you have accrued." Jinwoo put his phone away. He looked directly at Marcus, his eyes devoid of pity. "You say Miss Vance does not belong at this table. You are correct. This is not her table. It is my table. And you were never invited." He didn't have to set the table on fire. His words were the accelerant, and Marcus's own arrogance was the match. The conflagration was entirely internal, but the results were devastatingly public. Marcus Thorne made a choked, guttural sound. The last of his blustering rage dissolved, leaving behind a hollowed-out man. His knees buckled. He dropped to the polished marble floor, a heap of ruined ambition. He began to sob. Not quiet, dignified tears, but ugly, heaving, gasping sobs of a man who has lost everything and finally, far too late, understands it. Please, he wept, the word barely audible. Please. Jinwoo gave a small, sharp nod. The security team moved in. They lifted Marcus to his feet as if he weighed nothing. They did not drag him. They supported him, escorting him from the room with a clinical, almost merciful efficiency. The show was over. The debt was paid. A heavy silence hung in the hall. All eyes were on Ilara and Jinwoo. Ilara felt 1,000 emotions at once. The cathartic satisfaction of seeing her tormentor face consequences, the profound relief of her vindication, and the sharp, disorienting glare of the spotlight. Jinwoo turned to her, his expression softening. He gently squeezed her hand. Then he turned back to the silent, watchful crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice ringing with quiet authority. "My apologies for the interruption. Allow me to properly introduce my partner on this project and the future head of the Kwan Architectural Division." He gestured to her. He did not say her name. He let her claim the moment for herself. Ilara took a breath. She stepped forward into the light. "My name is Ilara Vance," she said, her voice clear and strong, "and I would be delighted to walk you through my vision for the waterfront." Later that night, after the gala had ended, after the endless congratulations and handshakes, they stood on the private terrace of the museum. The city spread out before them, a tapestry of light and shadow. The air was cool, carrying the distant sound of sirens and the hum of a metropolis that never slept. Ilara leaned against the railing, a glass of champagne untouched in her hand. The weight that had lived in her chest for 5 years was gone. In its place was a quiet, steady peace. It felt fragile, like new glass, but it was real. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly, looking out at the skyline. The public display. The dismantling. "Yes, I did," Jinwoo replied, coming to stand beside her. He was not looking at the city. He was looking at her. "Some people will take your silence for weakness. They will mistake your grace for submission. Men like Marcus Thorne only understand the language of absolute consequences. He needed to be shown that his power was an illusion, and everyone else needed to see that you are not to be underestimated." She finally turned to look at him. In the moonlight, the sharp planes of his face were softer. She saw the man behind the sovereign, the protector behind the CEO. "Thank you," she said, and the words felt inadequate for the sheer scale of what he had done. He had not just saved her. He had cleared a path for her, given her the tools, and then stepped back to let her walk it herself. He had given her back her own strength. "I told you, Ilara," he said, his voice low. "I am an admirer of competence. And I protect my assets." He allowed a small, rare smile to touch his lips. "You are a very valuable asset." She smiled back, a real, unguarded smile that made her eyes shine. "Is that your version of a compliment, Mr. Kwan?" "It is my version of the truth," he said. He reached out and gently took her hand, his fingers laced with hers, a comfortable, solid fit. "The truth is, the waterfront project is only the beginning. I have plans." "I have plans too," she said, her voice filled with a newfound confidence. "I have a list of about 20 other overlooked architects I plan to hire, and I want to start a mentorship program for young women in the field, and the west wing of this museum has a fundamental flaw in its load-bearing structure that needs to be addressed." He listened, his expression intent. He was not just hearing her, he was seeing the future she was building, the empire of her own talent. "It seems," he said, his thumb stroking the back of her hand, "that our plans are compatible." She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the quiet endurance, the silent suffering, the single moment of decision in a shadowed alcove. She thought about this man, who had seen her when she was invisible, who had recognized her worth when it was buried under years of abuse and fraud. Theirs was not a story of love at first sight. It was a story of recognition. It was a partnership forged in the crucible of crisis, built on a foundation of mutual respect. It was a slow, quiet burn, steady and true. "I don't leave because things become complicated," she said, her voice soft but firm, a promise to him and to herself. He brought her hand to his lips and pressed a light, formal kiss to her knuckles. His eyes held hers, dark and deep and filled with a quiet, unwavering certainty. "Good," Jin Woo Kwan said. "Things are always complicated." Together, they turned back to look at the city. It was no longer a fractured kaleidoscope of lights. It was a landscape of possibility, a future waiting to be designed. And for the first time, Ilara Vance felt like she was standing on solid ground, ready to build.